Most shirts I wear are large, but those shirts are pretty big.
You wear large?
My sternum sticks out, and I wear baggy shorts. My sternum really hinders my shirt size. I don't like wearing shirts that are tight at all. I like them just to be baggy.
Welcome to the Get Buckets podcast, sponsored by Nick Harmon and the Rocket Power Half Hour Marathon, appearing every day from 4:30 Pacific Time to 5 o'clock.
Also Pacific time, 5 o'clock Pacific time.
Also 5 o'clock Pacific Time. Be sure to catch that, and if you can't catch it, text Nick, and he will hook you up with all the good stuff. While you're at it, don't forget to like the podcast on Facebook. Y'all are doing well. We're getting like 2 more fans a week, so we're only 34 away from going viral. So
let's go.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Invite all your friends to like the podcast.
If you haven't,
I would love for you to spread the word.
Yeah,
about the podcast.
Why haven't you all done that by now, though?
Nathan, give me the update on the Prison City Crab basketball season thus far.
We won our first game last week. It was a monumental win. We have another game tonight. It's a win and we're in situation. It's a loser go home, whatever we want to call it. It's a must win. Luckily, it's also against a team that has not scored more than 33 points. And we usually score that in about a half. So we're looking good. We're looking for the playoffs. We're on the rise. We got Court finally showing up for games. So everything's looking good. Nick still hasn't scored, though. So he's going to try and score this week.
Well, we don't expect Nick to score, but we hope he does. Also, I hear that softball season has started down there in the Prison City. Tell me about it.
Yes, we won our first game 17-10, and our next game is next Tuesday at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time.
Was Court everything he was supposed to be out there on the softball field?
Court was everything he was supposed to be. He was as advertised.
I'm a good advertiser. What can I say?
You are. But we have a long podcast today, so we're going to try and bore you guys with some real knowledge from Kyle's head. So, Kyle, explain to me how a team that's lost 4 of their last 6 games in Villanova can still be ranked inside the top 20 in the nation.
Oh, the Big East is the Big East, and the Big East gets a lot of credit for what it is. And I think that coaches and writers and everyone that really has a vote anywhere in the world kind of gives the Big East too much credit. Just because you're the Big East doesn't mean you should be allowed. You're in the Big East doesn't mean you should be allowed to lose games and keep your ranking. You're still losing games, whether it's to a great team or an average team. You're still losing. It's ridiculous they're still in the top 20, and I can't explain it to you because it's not well-founded.
In other world news, Ohio State back to number 1 after Duke lost to Virginia Tech this weekend. Is that where they belong at number 1?
I'm not sure that anyone actually belongs at number 1 because no one seems to want to live up to it. You put a team in at number 1 and they decide they want to lose that week. So I don't know who's on Ohio State's schedule this week, but look for them to be in a couple of close games.
Speaking of the number 1, you like that transition? Yeah?
It was great. You're doing better with your life.
Okay. All right.
It's kind of a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, thanks. We have the tournament coming up, and I really think this is going to be just a
Hang on. What tournament are you talking about?
The National Collegiate Athletic Association basketball tournament. It's played every March.
You proceed.
Okay. And they actually rank teams in seedings 1 through 16. This year's going to be a little bit different, but I think it's going to be really exciting. I think there's going to be a ton of unexpected upsets that no one sees coming because I really don't think there's a ton of elite teams, and I just think everyone's kind of on average, and I think anyone could really beat anyone depending on how well they play. But let's go over some 1 seeds and who you feel are the 1 seeds as of right now. Who do you feel the 4 1 seeds would be?
I believe that if the tournament started today, The one seeds I would personally go with would be Ohio State, Kansas, BYU, and Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Um, that would be where I'm going, and that's also where Joe Lunardi, the resident bracketologist at ESPN.com, that's who he has as his one seeds also.
ESPN.com?
Yeah, it's ESPN.com.
That's kind of dead to me ever since they haven't given us our own special.
Well, they're working on it. The website's kind of getting a lot of traffic already, and they don't want to completely shut down their servers with all the traffic we bring in.
That makes sense. Okay, so what do you think about Duke? Why are they not deserving of a one seed in your mind?
In my mind, Duke isn't deserving of a one seed just because they haven't beat anyone that I look at and think, oh man, that team's really good. That's an impressive win. Their best win was at home against North Carolina. And North Carolina is good, but I'm not convinced that they're a great team. I'm not convinced that they're a team that's worthy of being a quality win at home. And other than that, they beat Kansas State. They beat Michigan State. Both who have been down this year are bubble teams, even though Kansas State's pretty much gotten off of that bubble. And then they lost to St. John's by 15 points. And that just disappointed me in Duke. And I just don't think they've proven that they're the number one seed.
I noticed that you had BYU in the Jimmers as a one seed. What is your defense for that pick? Even though I agree with it 100%.
BYU and the Fighting Jimmers are 4-0 against the RPI top 25, 9-1 total against the top 50. Their only loss out of all of that coming to UCLA, I believe, on a neutral court, which is turning out to be less of a bad loss than it originally looked like with the way UCLA is currently playing. And their only other loss on the season is on the road at New Mexico right after they beat San Diego State for the first time. New Mexico's a difficult place to play. And from there, they've bounced back and pretty much just taking care of their business.
Are there any teams that you could see grabbing a one seed that maybe no one's thinking about right now as a one seed?
The two teams that come to mind are Notre Dame and Purdue. They're both on the two line right now in Lunardi's bracketology. Purdue really came out of nowhere this year. No one really expected too much out of them after they lost Robbie Hummel before the season started. And Notre Dame has no true stars. They have some very, very solid players. They're very experienced. And I think if either of those teams makes a run through their conference tournament and wins the championship of their conference tournament, they'll have a very good shot at a one seed.
What do you think of Texas?
Texas is very good, but they've been struggling a little more lately. They're only 2-2 against the RPI top 25. You look through their schedule, they beat Kansas, which is a very, very good win, and that was at Kansas. And they took care of Missouri at home, but they lost to Pittsburgh on a neutral site, which if it comes down to Texas and Pittsburgh getting a one seed, if one of those two is going to get a one seed, you're going to think it goes to Pittsburgh because they own the head-to-head there. And the loss to Connecticut was really their last loss before the past couple weeks, but they're just taking on too many losses at a bad time to do that for them.
Well, thank you for sharing your knowledge, Obi-Wan. It was awesome. Let's move to the NBA and the trade deadline, and we can finally say this will be the last podcast this week that we talk about Carmelo Anthony. And he is now on the Knicks in just a massive trade with a lot of moving parts. And what were your initial thoughts about Carmelo Anthony going to the Knicks?
My initial thoughts were good for the Knicks. They did what they want. They became relevant again. But then I began to look into their situation of getting help around Amari and Carmelo. And they don't have a lot of hope of getting a third player to fill out their big three. I think they'd go after Chris Paul or Darren Williams. That would be ideal. But the salary cap is expected to come down after this offseason. Um, and they just financially, it doesn't make sense for them to be able to add a third player. So I think the front office still has a lot of work to do if they want to be competitive with the Bulls and the Heat in the future.
I agree. They really backed themselves into a corner, but what they did was what they had to do at the time. Their goal was to get another star in there and then worry about the future later, and that's exactly what they did. Um, but they have a lot of work to do. I know that they beat the Heat last night, but does anyone really see that as being like anything monumental? I mean, besides New York fans who have really come out of the woodwork now and are selling out games. Like,
Um, I mean, I think it was a bigger win than some people are willing to give them credit for, simply because it proves that later on the Knicks team has a mindset that they can compete and beat the Heat if they were to face them in the playoffs. Um,
there's no way.
but I would also say that the most underrated part of the trade is that for this year, the Knicks ended up with the two most talented players in that trade, in Chauncey Billups and Carmelo Anthony. In the future, Billups is going to fall off and retire sooner than any of the guys the Knicks traded. But for this year, they got the two best guys out of that trade.
They did for this year. But my biggest problem is, as far as looking back at last night, um, the Heat's just offense just broke down the last 5 minutes, and that's not going to happen every game. The Heat are not going to score whatever they scored, 86 points or something against the Knicks, who played great defense. I just don't think that they can do it for, even if they played in a playoff series, I don't think they could do it for 7 games. I don't think they could do it for 4. The other huge problem I see for the Knicks is they have no cap flexibility and no draft picks. They've given away every draft pick they've like ever owned, and it's all Isaiah Thomas is responsible for just about all of it. They have no center, and I don't know what they're planning on doing to fix that. It's okay when you're going against the Heat because, well, the Heat don't have a center either. But when you go against Boston or when you go against Orlando, you have no shot of stopping Dwight Howard with Ronnie Turioff.
Right, and I agree with that. But I would also say that most of the teams in the East have geared themselves towards beating the Heat and the Celtics. And the Celtics showed that by being willing to trade away Kendrick Perkins, who was their go-to Dwight Howard stopper. So it almost looks as if teams aren't as scared of the Magic as they have been in the past.
That could be dangerous. I'm not a huge Magic guy. I don't think that they're great, but people overlooking them is probably exactly what they want. And the Celtics trading away Kendrick Perkins, which we'll talk about later, I think, is really underestimated on how big of an impact that's going to be, because that means they're banking on Shaq being healthy or Jermaine O'Neal being healthy. And I don't see either one of those happening right now.
Right.
Okay, there's another star that's going to the New York area, and that's Darren Williams, which kind of came out of nowhere after the Nets got beaten the Carmelo deal. And Darren Williams goes to the Nets. The Jazz get a nice hefty package of Devin Harris and Derek Favors and 2 more first-round picks. But what do you think of this trade?
It seems to me like Utah jumped the gun too early. They were afraid, I think, that Darren Williams would do the same thing that Carmelo did next year. And New Jersey seems a little desperate, honestly. They gave up a lot to get a guy for a year and a half and then hope he re-signs with them when he has really showed no signs of being like, man, I really want to go to New Jersey. So in the end, I like the deal for the Jazz. They got a lot younger. They got a lot of picks. It's a great deal for them. For the Nets, I can't tell you how much I like it until I find out if he's going to re-sign with them or not.
I like it for both parties. I mean, obviously, if you're the Jazz, you have to love it because you got Derek Favors, who's like, 19 years old, and you got 2 more first-round picks. You got cap relief. You got all kinds of stuff if you're the Jazz. Something I did hear was that the Rockets actually had a shot at Deron Williams, but there was no Derek Favors to send the Jazz, and so the Jazz went, obviously, with the other package. But just shows you how hard the Rockets were working. But as for the Nets, I love it for the Nets. I mean, I really do. They took a gamble because their whole goal is to get a star to put on that face when they move to Brooklyn. And although Darren Williams is really, I guess, kind of hesitant at first because, I mean, he was kind of shell shocked he was traded just out of the blue. And so I think he'll warm up more to the idea of re-signing with the Nets because I believe in that ownership, and I believe Prokhorov will spend just a dumb amount of money to do whatever they need to do to win. And right now, they're actually a really dangerous team if you look at the pieces they have and how close they are to being, I just say, a playoff team, which is really what you need to do if you're going to get Darren Williams to sign on long term. You have Brook Lopez and you have Darren Williams. You really need just that scoring too, and you're kind of in business.
Another interesting wrinkle to that entire trade is the Mavs actually made a push to get Devin Harris to Dallas, simply because they knew that the Jazz really, really liked him, and the Mavericks were going to look to trade either over this offseason or the next year to get Darren Williams to Dallas, and that ended up falling through, obviously. But Darren Williams was a very coveted man at this trade deadline.
As he should be, top whatever point guard. I'd say he's top 3 point guard, no matter how you slice it. And he's just one of those guys that if you have on your team, I think you'll always be competitive just because of how good he is at distributing the ball and making plays. He's a top point guard, no doubt. But moving to maybe someone who's fallen off a little bit, Baron Davis was traded from the highlight Clippers to the lowly Cavaliers, and I'm curious as to how he handles that.
A lot of people have said they think Barron's going to retire or stop playing hard just because he's with a bad team. And he definitely has the past of, if he's on a bad team, underperforming, not really caring very much. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that again. But I don't think he's going to retire just because he's with the Cavs. I'm not sure how many years are left on his deal. But in a couple of years, I could see him being an asset for a playoff team as a backup point guard if he was willing to take that role. He'll be okay. He might fake injuries to not play. He didn't get along well with Coach Scott when they were in New Orleans together, but they'll work it out and they'll continue to be really, really bad.
What does this say about the Clippers that they traded him away for Mo Williams and they traded away their first round pick from this year?
Well, I think it says that the Clippers understand that they don't need any more youth on their team, because they have the youth. They have plenty of young guys on their team, and they need to add a couple of proven veterans that can come in and lead and score. And Veteran Davis is not a leader by any means on any basketball team. And I think they realize that it's not worth trying to make him work hard night in and night out. And I think they liked Mo Williams' 3-point shooting ability. I think that's something that they coveted too.
Yeah, I don't think the highlights are going to stop by any means because Mo Williams, he played with LeBron. They had highlights all the time, so can't be that much different playing with Blake Griffin, except it's going to be a lot better. In the kind of surprising move we were talking about earlier, the Celtics sent Kendrick Perkins to the Thunder and Nate Robinson for Jeff Green and Nene Kristić. Do you love the move for the Thunder, since I already know your answer to this?
Yes, I really do. I think it makes them a proven team out west. They have someone that can defend Andrew Bynum or a Paul Gasol. They have a big body that's physical that they've been missing. Kristić was far from the answer in that category. There were a lot of people in Oklahoma City happy to see him go. Not sure the Thunder were going to be able to pay Jeff Green at the end of this year anyways. And I'm interested to see if they're able to pay Kendrick Perkins. I'd like to see them do it, and I think they'll be able to. And the question is whether Kendrick will want to stay or not, because I know he really loved Boston.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Thunder and the Celtics traded their expiring deals to see who could sign the other ones role players. There was no chance that Thunder could sign Jeff Green just based on they had those 3 rookie deals with Durant, Westbrook, and Green, and you knew one of them wasn't going to be given an extension going forward, and it turned into Jeff Green because they've already got the other 2 locked up. And so what I think this does is it puts pressure on the Thunder both to win now and to prove that they can sign Kendrick Perkins. Because if you don't sign Kendrick Perkins and you don't win, let's say if you don't win the West, that was a huge cost giving up Jeff Green and Krishik for Nate Robinson if Perkins decides to leave. Another issue I see is Perkins hasn't been healthy all year. He's played like 20 games this season, and so you're counting on him to be your defensive stopper in the middle. And so I think it's a roll of the dice by the Thunder, but regardless, I love that they're trying to do something to spice things up.
I think they have a very solid chance of re-signing Perkins because I think when he debuts at home in Oklahoma City, that the crowd is just going to go nuts and to make Kendrick feel at home. He's going to be excited to play there. It's going to be a fun team, a young team, a little different from the Celtics, just because they're younger. They don't have Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, but I think the intensity is still there, even if Kevin Garnett's not there, pounding the floor and pounding his chest and screaming at everyone. So I think he's going to enjoy it in Oklahoma City.
The Thunder also grabbed Nazir Muhammad from the Bobcats. What are your thoughts on that move?
It's a good pickup, again, just because they need the size. He's a guy that can get in there, give you his – he's not going to do a lot offensively. He's a big body defensively that can give you 6 fouls against a Lakers front court that rotates Andrew Bynum, Paul Gasol, and Lamar Odom. Really, I just see the Thunder needing the size and the toughness, and he's going to bring a little bit of it.
And based on what you gave up, it was nothing. You gave up Mo Pete and DJ White. While
neither of whom were touching the court anyways.
And neither who were going to ever see the court. And what that does now is it gives you Nazir Muhammad, when healthy, Kendrick Perkins, and Serge Ibaka. That's pretty nasty as far as defensive purposes. You can match up pretty much with any big you want to, and you got all kinds of fouls and bodies to throw at people.
Absolutely.
Okay, the Charlotte Bobcats weren't done with Nazir Muhammad. They also sent their best player to the Portland Trailblazers in Gerald Wallace, and all they really got back was Joel Prisbilla and some picks.
I don't even know where to begin. Great for the Blazers. Very, very, very good for the Blazers. The Bobcats, I don't know what they were thinking just getting that back for a guy that's as talented as Gerald Wallace is. I really don't even know what to say here. The Bobcats should be contracted.
They're trying to blow it up, but I question why they went with Gerald Wallace as the first piece to go in the blow up scenario. I could have found a few better players to blow up than Gerald Wallace. And Michael Jordan's your team owner, and he gave away one of his own Jordan guys, which is a little concerning to me. I don't quite understand why. I don't think we ever will.
I get the concept of blowing it up, but how can you blow up something that really isn't even worthy of being blown up? They're not good.
That's why they blew it up. They're getting rid of their longer-term financial deals, which Gerald Wallace's was, but I don't know why they chose this deal, because the Blazers, you presume, are going to be a good team, and you got 2 of their first-round draft picks. And I don't know the conditions on these picks, but you would assume they're going to be like in the 20s-ish area. Why would you... I mean, that's not exactly the great rebuilding scenario you're looking for. You got 0 young pieces back to work with, unless you consider Dante Cunningham a great young piece. You got really nothing in return except cash, which is obviously what the Bobcats, I think, were after, which was the financial relief here.
It didn't make sense to me, but life goes on and the Bobcats will still be irrelevant.
I kind of like the Bobcats this year, not going to lie. No, I don't anymore, but
Right. Have fun with them.
that's all right. They're way down the list of my teams. Okay, 2 Rockets trades to go through. The first being they sent out Shane Battier, fan favorite, for Hashim Thabit, Damari Carroll, and the Grizzlies' first round pick. Personally, I love it. You weren't going to re-sign Battier. There was really no shot of that. He was going to go to not a proven winner, but he was going to demand more money on the open market with a playoff team like, say, Boston or Miami or Orlando. He was going to get money from one of those upper tier teams, and you wouldn't afford to pay him. So grabbing the number 2 pick in last year's draft, I think, is just a win for the Rockets. Whether or not he pans out, that's kind of up to him. And I'm not too high on that working out, but I like the deal anyway.
Yeah, I like the deal. All I can really think of when I see this trade is uh, ESPN's announcers last year, throughout the year, reminding me that Damari Carroll is a fifth-year senior. Uh, and I'm glad he's not in that role anymore because I'll never have to hear anyone call him a fifth-year senior again. But good deal for Houston. Uh, what's it going to hurt is the question. I mean, you've got a guy that could turn out to be great or he could bust, but you didn't really give up anything to get him.
Right. And you actually got a pick back, which
Right.
I didn't understand exactly. That really shows that the Grizzlies have pretty much given up on their last 2 drafts, or their last 2 drafts going back before this one, when they're giving away Hashim Thabit and giving you a first-round pick to take him on. And then also they had that deal for OJ Mayo fall through, which they were giving a pick to the Pacers. So they've given up really on their youth, and it appears they're going to try and do something with Rudy Gay out. But the Rockets also got the Dragon, Goran Dragic, for disgruntled point guard Aaron Brooks. And this is another trade that I love. What do you think about it?
It's a great trade for the Rockets. I love Aaron Brooks. I love his game, but he wasn't happy, and everyone knew it. So he wasn't good for the Rockets organization. The Suns, I don't like it as much for because I felt like Dragic was meant to be the second coming of Steve Nash almost. Like he's not as good as Steve Nash, and he might never be. But it just kind of seemed like he was being groomed under Steve Nash to take his place whenever he's out of Phoenix. And Phoenix decided against that.
Yeah, another factor leading into trading Brooks was that he was going to demand a lot of money this summer. There's no way the Rockets could give it to him based on the contract they gave Kyle Lowry last summer. So once they brought Kyle Lowry back, they kind of had to decide who's going to be the starter, and we're trading the other one. And Goran Dragic is only 23 years old, and he's left-handed, and he's Slovenian, and there's a lot of things I love about him. I don't love his 5+ turnovers per 48, but I can get over that for now.
He'll get better. That number will decrease as he spends more time in the league.
You got to hope so, because it's the worst in the league per 48 right now.
It'll get better. I know it will. Mark it down. You heard it here first.
Goran Dragic, all-star? Is that what you were saying?
No. Maybe once. Maybe.
What is there, a lockout?
He's one of the scabs.
Okay, let's move on to some games to pick. Yes, it's that time of the week. Guess who went?
Nathan is 14-9 overall after going 4-1 last week. I, however, went 1-4 and am 11-12 overall.
Ouch.
And for at least a week, Nathan has surpassed his master.
Ooh, Obi-Wan.
Let me explain what happened this past week in the picks. It turns out I'm actually happy that Nathan is ahead of me. Midweek, one of Georgetown's key players suffered a broken hand, and if I had known that, I probably wouldn't have been picking them to win come Saturday, but I did it.
It's unfortunate.
Unfortunate piece of luck.
Good luck for me.
But from there, I picked against BYU and I picked against Baylor. And Baylor is hands down my favorite team in the nation. And I can never pick them. I can't. It's like a jinx. If I pick them, they're not going to win. At BYU, I kind of feel the same way because I'm starting to really, really like BYU as a team and not just the Jimmer. Uh, so I was rooting for two teams that provided me with losses uh, in the standings this week, but that's okay because I know I'm smarter than Nathan, and I'm just happy to be here.
I'm thrilled you're here too, and I'm also thrilled to be ahead by 3 games, which is the
I
biggest cushion
really,
I've ever had.
I really like it, you've really outplayed me thus far through the pick'em season.
Oh,
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm humbled by that remark. Well, not really. I'm gonna probably brag about it.
Good for
But
you.
you want to pick some more games, see if you can catch up?
Let's do it. I probably can't, but let's go.
All right. Kansas is going to Mizzou Arena this weekend, this Saturday. I will lead it off. I'm taking Kansas. I've really not been impressed with Missouri lately, although Mizzou Arena is a really tough place to play, and I'll implore the Kyle Crawford strategy of rooting for Missouri, but I'm picking Kansas.
I'm going with Kansas too. I know Missouri hasn't lost at home all year, which includes a absolute beatdown of Baylor this past week. But Missouri is just the type of team Baylor couldn't play with. Um, and Kansas is going to be composed. They have some senior leaders that are going to be able to handle the Missouri tempo, the Missouri press, slow it down, play their game, and Kansas will come out of there with a victory.
Duke going to Chapel Hill on Saturday. Very marquee matchup. Who do you have?
Uh, this is possibly the greatest rivalry in college sports. I feel it's my favorite game to watch in all of college sports. I'm going to go with Duke. I'm not convinced North Carolina is that good. Uh, Duke just lost to Virginia Tech, and I like to think that they are good enough not to lose 2 games in that short of a stretch.
North Carolina had Duke, had them by the throat on the road and lost, but I will still take them at home. They've been playing better. I think they've crawled up to number 12 in the latest rankings, which is probably a little high, but I like them at home. Go Harrison Barnes. Do your thing, dude.
Villanova at Pitt. Who are you going with, Harv?
Based on what we talked about earlier with Villanova losing 4 of 6 and just looking awful, I'm taking Pitt, and you know how much I hate Pitt, so this is a stretch pick for me.
Um, I'm going Pitt there too. I actually love Pittsburgh, as you know. Jamie Dixon's one of my favorite coaches. They just have a really solid team, and Villanova has really been struggling. I do really like Jay Wright too. This is a battle of two of my favorite coaches in the nation, but I think Pitt's going to come out with a victory.
Notre Dame at UConn. UConn could really use a win here, so I will take them.
Notre Dame went into Pittsburgh earlier this season, where Pittsburgh almost never loses, and knocked off Pittsburgh. I believe that they're going to go to UConn, and they're going to take Kimball Walker out of the game as much as you can. They're going to force him to take bad shots, and Ben Hansbrough and Tim Abramitis are going to win one for the White Boys.
I'm all for that, but I'm still taking UConn. All right. Game day is in Waco. Are you going?
Yes, I will go.
Free breakfast tacos or something I saw.
For the first 1,500 there, free breakfast tacos from Rudy's.
Is that going to be you?
We'll see. I don't know how many people are going to go. It's the first weekend of Baylor spring break. College Game Day actually made a video and sent it out to Baylor. I don't know who else they've sent it out to, imploring students to stay. Reese Davis is actually speaking on it, talking about all the reasons you should stay. College Game Day wants there to be a big crowd there, and there will be. The question is, will it be 80% Baylor or 60% Baylor fans?
I didn't even think about that. That's actually really true. There could be a lot of Texas fans there.
At the Baylor A&M game this past weekend, I think the Baylor fans did a fairly good job of showing up. There were a lot of school activities going on. Sing was going on. But it was it was a good crowd, and the Aggies really didn't have anything to cheer for, which made it very nice.
Aren't you glad that I knew that the Aggies would suck?
I'm so happy. On the note of A&M, I've come to realize that they've done nothing more than beat who they are supposed to beat.
Right.
They are
Exactly.
consistent, but they are not anything special. Baylor has more talent than they do, and
And
when Baylor plays well, they would beat A&M 10 out of 10 times.
good rant. All right. Let's get to the game. Texas is going to Waco. I'm taking Texas. I mean, I don't think Baylor's on that level that Texas is. If they play really well, they definitely are. But I just think Texas is just too talented for them. I'll take Texas.
For Baylor fans, it's really, and the team, it's going to be the perfect storm. It's going to be Lacedarius Dunn's senior night, the game after he's most likely broken the all-time Big 12 scoring record. College game day is going to be in town. We're playing Texas, who the last time they were in Waco, Quincy AC dunked on 10 times. We need the win to have any shot at getting into the NCAA tournament, other than making a deep run in the Big 12 tournament. It's very much the perfect storm for Baylor fans and for the team. And I think Baylor has a chance, but I can't pick them because I'm not allowed to. So I'm going with Texas.
Florida going to Vanderbilt in a less exciting game. I will take Vanderbilt at home in their funky looking arena.
I lied to you earlier. I'm taking Florida.
Ooh, a change of picks. Trying to make up a game?
Trying to make up a game. And it was a game where, when you asked me earlier, I was very much not knowing who I was going to pick.
What made you
So
change your mind?
I went with Vanderbilt simply because of the unique home court advantage that they have with the benches being on the end of the courts. Um, but Florida has been very good to me. I've picked Florida multiple times, and they've done very good things for me. And I really need to make up that game, so I'm going with Florida.
I see you're using my strategy from football season.
Hey, there's a game to make up,
Try and
and
make it up.
after this week, we're more or less, for this version of the pick'em, we're going to be pretty much out of games to pick.
Yeah, we may have to pick like Fox Sunday baseball or something.
I mean, we can do obviously we can predict who we think tournament winners are going to be, conference tournament winners, and then I think we should both fill out a bracket and
No,
somehow convey it to our listeners.
I'm not filling out a bracket this year.
That's a lie. You already said BYU is going to win it all in your bracket.
That's why I'm not filling it out because I already know who's going to win.
You're an idiot.
Thank you. All right, boys and girls. Well, thank you for joining us this week. Tune in next week as we decide who has longer hair, Kyle or myself.
Luke Walton. Luke Walton has longer hair than both of us.
Luke Walton does have longer hair than both of us, but find out next week who has longer hair. We will measure during the podcast. If you want to sponsor the podcast, be sure to text one of us or
Tweet at us.
do something. Get in touch with us. Sponsor the podcast. And
Don't forget about quarter ads.
Don't forget
For a quarter,
yeah.
you can make up an ad and we will air it.
Yes. And also be sure to tune in to the Nick Harmon Rocket Power half-hour marathon at 4:30 Mountain Time, running till 5 o'clock. So until
Also,
what?
Mountain Time.
Yes, that's also Mountain Time.
You can also find Nick on World of Warcraft. What's his gamer name there? Do you know by chance?
Nick.
I would try something like Nickalicious2419.
No,
Look for him there.
it's probably like Scooby Doo Hunter 12.
Scooby-Doo 112. Look for Nick on WoW.
But if you're in the Horde, you can't find him. You got to be in the Alliance.
Crap.
Sorry.
I'm in the...
Okay, well, tune in next week when we talk more about World of Warcraft. Love you guys. Get buckets.
See ya. Buckets.